In a time when our world most desperately needs men to be men, it's sadly when we need lions, all we have is house cats. Let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Ricky, and welcome to the Thinking Critically from an Evangelical Worldview. If this is your first time, I invite you to click that subscribe button and that bell to be notified of any future videos. I'm in Chicago. Today is September 24th. I'm in Chicago to run the Chicago Hoka Half Marathon on Sunday, Lord willing, and then I'm going to fly to Atlanta next Friday to run the race on October 2nd in Atlanta, and then come back to Chicago to run the Chicago Marathon on October 10th. All of that, of course, Lord willing. We're playing things by ear because day by day, different races are announcing cancellations. I grieve over those that have put out all that training and hard work only to be disappointed at the last minute. I'm hoping that my races are still a go, but if not, training never stops. Today, I want to talk to you about what I titled the feminization of our culture in general and the church in particular. I'm going to be showing you a Time magazine cover of Prince Harry and his wife Meghan, and you're going to see the imagery of Meghan standing in the forefront and Prince Harry with his hand on his wife's shoulder standing in the back, in the background. And even the most charitable interpretation of that, he might be trying to signaling that he's simply supporting his wife in her endeavors. But I think that is indicative of the messaging and the direction of our culture. That does not represent biblical uh, fidelity to the role of a man and a woman. And today, I just want to talk to you about what I understand as our society's rejection of God's creative decree that was created to be the head and the woman was created to be the helpmate. We see it in the media, we see it in the TV media, we see it everywhere. And so I just want to speak to what I see is a troubling trend that men are not being men. And so Delino DeShields, one of the rising intellectuals that I would encourage you to become familiar with. He's on Twitter. He's on the network shows. He's on Jason Whitlock. He's a regular contributor. He's a writer for the Blaze, and so I would encourage you to connect with him. And he is the author of that great quote that I began this YouTube video: "When we need lions, all we have are house cats." Now, I consider myself a lion. That doesn't mean I'm anything great, but I embrace biblical manhood. And so I want to show you a clip of Dr. Vodi Bakum talking about the erosion, the rejection of biblical manhood. I want to show you our interview where the Lionel DeShields makes that comment about when we need lions, all we get are house cats. And then I want to just end with some biblical reflections on how that is, how this embrace of feminization is eroding the church and biblical.
Dirty it up.
PE.
PE. PD. Professor Delano, PE. PE is Public Enemy. Delano, you have any thoughts on Joy Reid and the Nicki Minaj dust up? Where do you come down on this?
It's so interesting that
the left, who reacted so strongly a few years ago when Laura Ingraham basically told LeBron James to shut up and dribble, right? She wanted him to stick to his lane and not get into political commentary. And the left defended him and attacked her. But now they have their own version, which is shut up and rap. So when Nicki Minaj dares to question the narrative, the message, or however we want to frame it, we see how viciously they react to her. The irony is that when black folk, whether conservatives or socially conscious liberals, point to the impact that some of these rappers and the excesses of hip hop culture have on our communities and particularly our young people, the response from the Joy Reids of the world is always, well, it's parents' responsibility to raise their children. But apparently when it comes to the vaccine, it's the responsibility of artists to ensure that, you know, the older people in our community, right, or black people in general, it's their responsibility to make sure that black folks get the jab. So to me, the hypocrisy is stunning. And as you said, Jason, I stand with people who question and criticize the artistry and the content, whether it's Nicki Minaj, Cardi B, Lil Nas X, Snoop Dogg. It's not that I dislike these people personally. I just know that they have a tremendous amount of influence, and the direction in which they're influencing, particularly our young people, who oftentimes lack parental supervision and some of the other, you know, protective factors that enable them to consume this content without trying to live it out. But again, it's so interesting that, you know, when you question their content, the liberals push back on you. But when these artists speak for themselves, and it's not just Nicki Minaj, Busta Rhymes said something similar a couple weeks ago. He was at a concert, he was telling the audience, you know, it's good to be back with you all. He said something to the effect of, you know, forget about, he used different language, but forget about these masks. I'm tired of these masks. You know, we need to realize we have liberty and freedom. And who responded to him and did a whole video? Roland Martin, who wanted to check Busta Rhymes and set him straight and you know, talk about vaccine hesitancy and all these other things. But again, these people will never criticize these artists for the things that they actually say, their actual content, only when they threaten to upset the democratic narrative.
I was slightly distracted. I'm just keeping it real when you were talking. I liked how you brought up Roland Martin because I read your column today, and I think there's great synergy a lot of times between the things I write, the things you're writing. It's like we move at the same beat and swim in the same lane. And I see Roland Martin, Joy Reid, I see they're the same. Their job is to police the thought of black people. And it's not to police the thought so that black people experience more freedom, experience more success. It's, are you aligned and obedient to the Democratic Party? That's their only job. And it has nothing to do with the welfare concern of black people. There's this myth out there that if you're perfectly aligned with the Democratic Party, that means you're perfectly aligned with black people and the welfare of black people. And I'm sorry, it's just not true. And I see, and I make the argument, and it was somewhat a humorous analogy, but it's totally serious. Joy Reid can't keep her job if she moves off of one Democratic talking point, if she moves off of one LGBT talking point, if she moves off of one BLM talking point, she is done. And she knows that. And what drives me crazy is I don't think it's what she truly believes. I certainly don't think it's consistent with what she used to believe and the way that she was raised, but she's done all this just to protect the bag or the paycheck. And so maybe her values are in alignment with the culture, the hip hop culture, because money justifies any and everything.
And that's the way it seems with a lot of these people. You mentioned Joy Reid, I mentioned Roland Martin, same thing. You know, Mark Lamont Hill, Don Lemon, Bakari Sellers, Trevor Noah, outlets like The Root, The Griot, Black News Channel. They never want to invite rigorous debate, substantive conversation on policy issues so that their Black audience can hear multiple sides of a particular issue, right? It's always continuing to hammer home, you know, left-wing talking points. And as you said, you know, for Joy Reid, she had her issue with the LGBT community a couple years ago when she had her blog posts were unearthed. And as I said, Roland Martin had a similar issue 9 years ago during the Super Bowl. He tweeted a joke after, I think it was an H&M commercial in which David Beckham was, you know, in his underwear. And he said something to the effect of, if you have guys at your Super Bowl party who are cheering that on, you need to smack them. And GLAAD and other LGBT organizations ran him down, right? They caught up to him in the streets. They made him apologize. He did the apology tour. And now when you fast forward to last year, right, when he's talking to BLM, he never asked them, you know, why are you against the nuclear family, right? Why would an organization that's supposed to be for Black people be against the nuclear family? Instead, he's asking them about LGBT issues and intersectionality. So these people are both morally compromised and oftentimes, you know, politically inept. All they do is function as Democratic operatives to keep Black folks in line. And they are the middlemen between the abusive relationship that the Democratic Party has with the Black masses. And they are the ones that function to keep us in the house. And Jason, as you said, our columns today were perfectly in sync. I use a slightly different analogy, and I say that I'm not always for the slavery analogy for a number of different reasons. I get it, and I understand why people use it. And I think, to some respect, Democrats act like they own us, right? Their behavior is similar to what a person would, similar to how a person would act if someone or something that they own strays too far. But I actually use a different analogy, which is one of an abusive relationship. And I'm thinking of, you know, pick a Tyler Perry movie, right? You see the antagonist, he comes to the door, the woman is packing her stuff, she's getting ready to leave, and here he is, he's in his wife beater, he says, come back here, you can't leave me, ain't nobody gonna love you the way I love you. That's how Democrats think and talk to Black folk, right? As soon as they think somebody may be influencing us, to question part of their narrative, to question the degree to which the Democratic Party and the feelings of white liberals constitute the center of the Black orbit, the moment they feel like those things are being questioned, the dogs come out. They'll say, you know, Black men, they voted for Trump because they hate Black women, because they want to be part of the white power structure. They'll say anything they can to keep us in line. And as you said, Nicki Minaj noted the fact that many other artists think about COVID and the vaccine the same way she does. They just don't want to say it publicly. And that's one of the big problems. And that's why I'm actually encouraged to see the fact that some of the people leading the exodus from the Democratic House, however you want to characterize that house, are Black men. Partly because it would be one of the first movements that Black men have led in quite some time. And partly because we're at a point now where we need lions, not house cats. And too many of our men are sitting there on the porch, spayed, neutered, docile, and perfectly content to eat out of the master's hand. And that's why I want to see more people, whether it's COVID or any other issue, right? I want to see more people, and particularly men, start to say, you know what? These people say that they're serving us, but they don't serve our interests. And the Black folk who act as their middlemen, who say, who literally dance for them, right? Who say, oh, what do you carry in your bag? And Hillary Clinton says, hot sauce. And Charlemagne the God from the Breakfast Club says, you know they're going to accuse you of pandering. And then Hillary Clinton says with an awkward laugh, well, is it working? This is the type of leadership that we get from the black elite. So when you write, Jason, and when I write, and it seems as if we are utterly disgusted with their behavior, it's because we are. And I'm tired of it. I want substance in our community, not this person wears Converse, this person likes a particular brand of barbecue sauce, this person plays a saxophone, this person smoked reefer in college and listened to Tupac. All of that is superficial representation and cultural affirmation for people who really, if we really want to go there, and I think today's the day where we should, a lot of us have, how do I say this, low cultural esteem. That's why whenever we talk about things to move the black community forward, we always pivot back to what white people think. And I'm gonna end here soon. I was in the barbershop last night, right? Talking to some of the guys in the shop. And, we talking freely. We got all sorts of guys. We got guys who profess to be Christian. We got guys in fraternities. We got black Hebrew Israelites. We got black nationalists. We got all sorts of guys. And every time we talked about an issue related to the black community, and if I brought up family, somebody else responded with, well, they won't let us do X, Y, and Z. They won't let us be free. So at one point I asked the guys, I'm like, look, you got the picture of a lion on your smock, right? The Lion of Judah. Why is it every time I ask you about us, you respond to me with they? Again, are we lions or are we house cats? And at some point, the black masses, and particularly black men, are going to need to answer that question.
You're actually co-signing your genocide and death.
An attack on masculinity is an attack on the God who created us. He created us male and female. We are not the same. And there is beauty in the differences between male and female. And the problem is that when you attack masculinity, you are actually attacking a preserving force. If you don't have strong men in a culture, then what you have is young men who are not kept in check. And what do? They wreak havoc. And when those young men wreak havoc, you start looking around, and what do you immediately want? You immediately want someone or something strong enough to bring that into order again. So it's like we're creating a problem that we're going to have to run around and try to solve. And the way that that problem is solved is by the very thing that you attacked in the first place. So, men are a preserving force. Men are a force that defends society, that defends the family. So when you attack men, you are leaving things that need to be defended in a position where they're not being defended. So we're actually cutting off our nose to spite our face.
Delano Squires comes on this show a lot, and he was on here earlier today, and we constantly talk about men shunning responsibility.
Yeah.
And we see it, and I particularly our position on abortion, to me, is an irresponsible position. That this leftist, liberal, feminist point of view, that's her decision. I don't control that. That's just on her. Whatever she decides, I'm good with. And we just had this conversation today. That's an irresponsible point of view to have.
Yeah.
And it goes back to what you're saying. It's like when you take that irresponsible position, and now abortion, particularly here in America, if you go look at the percentage of how many black babies are being destroyed in the womb, you're actually co-signing your genocide and death.
Yeah, 12% of the population, almost 30% of abortions. Yeah. Yeah. And in most of our major cities, more black babies are aborted than born.
Off to my side, and we see Prince Harry standing behind his wife, Meghan. And this will be in a upcoming Time magazine cover feature that talks about the most influential people in the world. And so here is Prince Harry, supposed to be in the royal bloodline, and he's standing behind his wife. This is indicative of how our culture is flipping the script as to God says left and mankind says no, we'll go right. Mankind says up and God says go down. Mankind says go west when God has said go east. And this is a bad look, but this is indicative of the secular culture and how they're trying to present the image that talks about the role of men and women. And so we see a feminization of the culture, and we see it now even permeating the church. Just yesterday, Josh McDowell, a well-renowned and well-respected Christian apologist, apparently went to a conference last week where he was asked and made comments about critical race theory. And he simply said that African Americans and other minorities don't get the same opportunity because of they don't take advantage of the educational opportunities in America. And he faced an avalanche of the cancel culture. And to my regret, he capitulated, and he is now taking a step away from ministry. And that's what we see. Max Lucado went to the National Cathedral, and he spoke against homosexuality. He faced the backlash, and he quickly capitulated and apologized. You heard even Delino DeShields. He talked about Roland Martin a few years ago, made a similarly innocuous comment about a David Beckham commercial. And GLAAD, one of the prominent LGBT organizations, went after him with full fury, and he capitulated. Joyce Reid, who Jason Whitlock spent most of his program criticizing, a few years ago made a comment about the lesbian community. She faced the backlash, and now she has joined the moral revolution. You see many pastors, prominent, kowtowing to the LGBTQ agenda. Where have all the courageous men went to? A few weeks ago, there was a prominent singer who made a video talking about how he was so proud of his daughter and her modesty and dress. He faced a backlash from the feminist movement and then subsequently apologized. Brothers and sisters, where are the strong men in our Christian evangelical community? We see capitulation after capitulation, and it's embarrassing. And I join Delino. I'm sick and tired. I'm mad. I'm angry. I hope it's a righteous anger. If you agree, or if you disagree, let me know in the comment sections where you think I'm off base. If you think that I am misguided in my understanding, let's talk about it. Until then, I ask that you would strongly consider clicking the subscribe button, clicking that bell to be notified of any future videos. Tell your friends, spread the word, pray that I will gain more and more exposure, that you might hear a African American, one of the few African Americans speaking from a evangelical, unapologetic Christian world. I would say you're outraged, and you're not, because I follow the data. And so you saw a 12-minute clip from Delino DeShields. You saw a 2-minute clip from Bodie Botcom. And so I got some questions for you, my fellow evangelicals. As I talk about the feminization of the culture, and I talk about what's going on in our world. And so here's a few questions for you. Why are you aligning yourself with the Democratic Party? Between 85 and 94% of African Americans, you, African American evangelicals, you vote for a Democratic Party. Why are you aligning with the Black Lives Matter talking points? Why do you align with the LGBTQ talking points? Why do you align with Joy Reid and Don Lemon, Mark Lamont Hill, and Roland Martin? Why do your talking points align with the left-wing talking points, which are against the nuclear family? That's what BLM, and you heard Delano, and he talked about it in their 13 points. Oh yes, they've modified it since then, but then in their original 13 points, they talked about they were against the nuclear family, the first institution that God ordains. Why do you align yourself with organizations that act like they own you? You remember Joe Biden. You ain't black unless you vote Democrat. Hillary Clinton goes on a African American TV show, and then she talks about what's in your purse, and she talks about hot sauce. The host understands what she was saying, because again, African Americans, we typically like spicy things, and so we love our hot sauce on our chicken and our fried fish. And Delano says with an awkward laugh, she says, "Is it working?" And then Delano talks about black men finally standing up. And there was a doubling of African Americans who voted for Donald Trump. I was one of those African Americans. I did it very reluctantly. I did not vote for him in 2016, but I was convinced through arguments from people like Al Mohler that it was acceptable for evangelicals to get behind the presidency of Donald Trump. I'll get to heaven, and God will assess and let me know that I make the right choice. But this is what I do know: voting for Joseph Biden was not a consideration whatsoever. And then Delano talked about barbershop conversations, and he said every time he put it to the audience, they said they won't let us be free. They. And again, it's the mystical man. It's the white man. They won't let us. And so we deny our own personal agency. That's not men. And you see where I get the quote. Delano says at least 3 times, are we lions or are we house cats? And he talked about how we have affinity to those people in the political arena that as long as they wear Converse, they smoke weed, and they play the saxophone. You know what he was talking about, right? Those were the things that we said that Bill Clinton was the first African American president because he smoked. He admitted he smoked weed. He went on Arsenio Hall and he played the saxophone. And then I showed you the 2-minute clip from Bodie Botcom, where he talked about an attack on masculinity is an attack on God. And he said men are a preserving force. He said when young men who are not kept in check, they wreak havoc. And he says we are cutting off our noses to spite our faces. And then Jason ends that video saying we're co-signing our own death. Now you heard Bodie Botcom, he talked about that we're 12% of the population, but we account for 30% of the abortions. And those numbers fluctuate, but again, we are a minority of the population, but we account for well over 1/3 of all abortions in America.